Okay, welcome to Meditate at 8's line by line reading of the big book. If you want to be prepared, we're on page 57, last two paragraphs. But let's take a moment of silence to acknowledge the alcoholic still struggling inside and outside the rooms, but especially inside the rooms. It's on my heart that there's a lot of people that are still struggling that are inside the room. So let's just take a moment of silence to acknowledge them and to meditate and pray for them. Okay, and we have the set aside prayer on the screen. Dear God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the big book, and the 12 steps. Everything I think I know about the program, the fellowship, and especially about you, God. So I may have an open mind and a new experience with all of these. Please help me see the truth. Amen. It's over to you, Jill. Oh, I don't think I said I'm Amy. I'm an alcoholic, but there you go.
Okay, so just to set the scene a little bit, we've been going through the first pages that deal with our guidelines for doing step 1 and step 2. And the reason I broke off and ended last week with 2 paragraphs remaining is this is where we transition into step 3. So if you are just getting organized with the big book, you'll find, and I suggest you put a tab on page 59, because that's where the 12 steps are listed in how it works. So let's just recap briefly where we're at. Step 1, we admitted. So we know it's a we program, admitted. And we went through that about how we are giving over. We are no longer struggling. We are 100% in the door to say that we were powerless over alcohol. And then we noted that the next part says, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. And to recap, we emphasize that it's acknowledging the unmanageability in our life is due to our drinking or due to our using of whatever substance or whatever it is that's taking it out of self. And again, I'm reminding you guys that if you've been sober a long time and you're struggling in emotional sobriety, switch alcohol for whatever it is that you're letting be your higher power right now. And that will help you work through the alcoholic thinking. Does that make sense? And then, so the unmanageability, what's becoming unmanageable in my life because I'm letting this higher power take control. So think for a second about what it is that's going on in your life. Are you letting something become a higher power for you? And is your life becoming unmanageable as a result of that? Is that everybody following that? Does that all make sense to everyone? Okay, and then step 2 was came to believe. So this is just crossing through the door and opening our mind to the idea that there would be a power greater than ourselves. And we discussed for pages about how we have to open our minds to be willing to think that there's something bigger than ourself. Doesn't say we've actually done it. It says we're willing to believe that. And we're acknowledging that if we're willing to believe this, it will restore us to sanity. And we spent quite a bit of time discussing the definition of sanity and what that meant. Now, I want you, if you've been sober for a long time, to expand that thought of sanity to access all areas of your life. And then now we're crossing in these last 2 paragraphs. And Amy, you want to pick a reader, and we'll start with this statement. What is this?
Sorry, I was taking notes. Sure. Sylvia, do you want to kick us off? Reading.
Would
So
love to. Thanks, Amy. So,
Thank you.
Sylvia, alcoholic. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his maker. Then he knew. Even so, God has restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us.
Okay, so I have written at the top of this page, we came to believe. So that is what's happened to me in AA. I turned up, so we came, all right? I showed up in the rooms of AA. We came to, we detoxed. Okay, and I can't underemphasize how important this is with newcomers and relapsers. If you are working with people that are newly sober or have seriously slipped, we have to get them to a point where they can hear us. So, and their medical health is of paramount importance. And we'll learn about this later in the book in working with others. Bill tells us several times, and even in his own story, how important it is that we see everybody that's in a really bad state has an opportunity to detox safely. Now, if you're like a couple of us I know in here are dealing with people still drinking who are phoning us up drinking, we can't help that person except to get them safely into bed that night as best we can. They're never typically going to tell us the truth any more than we told people the truth when we were challenged. I mean, ask yourself the question, when you were challenged, have you been drinking? How many times would you say, oh, absolutely, yes. I'd hide it. I'd lie about it. I mean, and didn't take a genius to figure out that I'd been drinking. But anyway, we got them through the detox. We came to believe. Now, this is where we move from saying in step 2, we're going to open our mind to the idea. Now we're coming into step 3 and we're saying, absolutely, we're signing up for this. And so I've got, he humbly, that paragraph beginning, what is this but a miracle of healing? I've highlighted all of that. And then I've put an arrow from he humbly offered himself to his maker. Well, that's step 3. And don't get hung up on words like maker or God. I mean, we've been through this too. And when we were talking about we agnostics, this is your concept of a higher power. So we are not trying to dictate anybody's version of God here. So that's step 3. I've got highlighted there. And then it says, we got a big promise here coming up. It says, even so has God restored us to all our right minds. Okay, that's a really fancy way. And I've got this written right next to it. We've been promised sanity. And if you remember last week when Gary was here, he defined sanity for us. So if you don't remember what that is, you can listen to the audio of last week's recording, or you can look it up for yourself, download the AA Big Book Dictionary, because we spent quite a bit of time. Sanity, it's right-mindedness, right? We're trying to get out of a state of dis-ease. So we came to believe. Now, when we drew near to him, this last paragraph, okay, he disclosed himself to us. And that is when the obsession is removed. When we become right-minded, when we align ourselves perfectly with our higher power, the obsession is removed. And it's not going to be very often that we're going to have the white light experience that Bill described, where, I read something to you or somebody in AA talks to you and you suddenly feel like, oh my God, the obsession for alcohol's gone. That wasn't my experience. my experience in this room was doing a lot of hard work. I knew I needed to be in here because I kept hearing your stories, and your stories were like mine with a few different details of facts, but it was the same disease being described to me over and over and over again. And no matter which person shows up in the squares in these rooms, we recognize each other and we support each other because we share that way of thinking. So what we're doing here is and again, notice from the very beginning, step 1, it said we. So I really want to make sure everyone in here understands studying the big book is never a replacement for going through this book line by line with a sponsor that has done the same thing with their sponsor and taken you through the 12 steps individually. There's no replacement for that. At least that's my experience of what finally got me sober. But she also said that it's my responsibility to pass it on. So if I can somehow help people abbreviate things and see the light and make you want to know more, that's part of why I'm here and why isn't that right? Yeah, that's exactly why we're here. We're to motivate each other to be the best possible people that we can be. And if you haven't passed this on to somebody for a while and you've been sober for a while, you guys have got the skills. It's in sharing this that we actually learn it ourselves. At least that's been my experience. Every time I have to explain this to you guys, I get these little lights. And it's not have to, I get to explain this to you. I get so excited because I start to understand connections between this book that I never understood until I started explaining it. But anyway, now we've decided we're on step 3. So step 1, we came in here. We've done our step 1. We are acknowledged we're alcoholics. Step 2, we come to believe that we opened our mind to the idea. And now we're saying, I will believe. I'm going to start to make this connection. And with that, we turn the page and we are.
Can I butt in?
Oh, yeah, please do.
I have 2 things. One is in that last sentence, when we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. That I put, like, you said that was a promise. And I kind of was thinking, how we've broken down some of the paragraphs, like we drew near to him was a condition that leads to the promise.
Yes.
I thought I'm trying to dig deeper. That, and then
Fabulous point. That's
the
what
other few,
Yep, I like that.
I've just been, whenever I see that, I try to just, how you have your little notations with the colors. Oh, your pants are cute. Anyways,
Getting my pen, that's worth writing.
I just thought your pants were cute. Fern mentioned in our day-to-day meeting, because for some of y'all, we meet every single day at 8 a.m. But she was talking about illness versus wellness. You know how Jill just mentioned that it's a we program, and illness starts with an I and wellness starts with we. I thought that was kind of fun. If you like those little silly things, that helps me remember stuff. I like that illness was an I, and then wellness is a we, starts with we. You just made me think of that.
So
Anyway.
what you said there is moving closer to God is a condition precedent for this working. That's exactly right. There's the promise there, but it's this getting closer to God. If you want to speak in legal terms, you don't get one without the other. So we have to be willing, and then we have to finally make that connection for this to work, because it's a spiritual program. So that is exactly right, Amy. That's a very good point. Condition precedent. Okay, so this is a good point to pause. Is there anybody, because we're about to go into how it works, which is a whole new chapter. So I see your hand up there, Sherry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
thanks, Jill. I just want to share something that I heard at a meeting not that long ago, because it really fits in with that last sentence. And the words that I'm going to share with you, there's an older gentleman who's been in the program a long time. And he has these written on a piece of paper, taped to his fridge door. And it says, if I feel distanced from God, who moved? So I just thought I'd share that because I've got that written in my big book right below that last line. If I feel distance from God, who moved? Just thought I'd share that.
I love it. I've written
Thanks
it
so
down.
much.
That's now in my big book too. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments before we move over to how it works? Okay, okay. Before we get started into this, I have to tell you a funny story. When I came into AA in my first physical meeting, and then it was COVID and all the rest of it, there's a Whistler Mountain group in BC that I would turn up at, and I was the only woman. And it was a bunch of mountain men. I called them my mountain men. And they'd been there for years. And I came in there all defiant, and I just sulked. And my nickname from Johnny and the groups on Bronx was, what was it, Johnny? Yeah, but. And that was my name for a very long time. And now in Whistler, they made me read made me every night. Every night I had to read out how it works out loud, because I kept saying, yeah, but, and they said, just let these words soak into you. So this is truly one of the most important parts of the book. Now let's just take a look at the title right before we start reading it, how it works. There's three concepts that we're going to go through in this chapter. And it's the how in how it works. H stands for honesty. O is for open-mindedness. And W is for willingness. And I've got written in brackets next to willingness, not perfect. It's about my willingness doing this. So that's how it works, with honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And you're going to hear these in the following paragraphs. This is going to be explained what I'm on about. This chapter I've also called my GPS to finding my higher power. That's just my nickname for it, because this chapter gives me the directions on how I'm going to work this program, what exactly I'm going to do. And if you're a sponsor, it's by going through this process that we pass on what's been so generously shared with us. So the other comment I've got written, okay, I'm not going to go there yet. Let's read this first paragraph.
I was going to see if Ron wanted to kick us off here. Rarely have we. It's a big paragraph.
Yep. I'm Ron. I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Ron. Oh,
Hello. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates, and not a fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. The chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest.
Okay, this is a very heavy paragraph, so get your pens out and your highlighters. Okay, so rarely have we seen a person fail. So I've circled that word fail. Fail at what? Not just drinking. This is about failing at life. If we don't follow this path, we don't get the reward of a design for living. So this isn't just about drinking. This is about a design for living. And that's what this program promises us. These steps and why it's so important to break this down into simple language, especially after we go through how it works in the family afterwards, and these chapters that people don't often read, it tells us in really simple language how to conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis with other people once we're sober. And it also tells us in early recovery how to behave while the family is adjusting to us, and relationships are adjusting, and jobs are adjusting. So anyway, thoroughly fail. That's what it said. We're not failing at just drinking. We're failing at living. Okay, and then thoroughly followed our path. I've circled the word thoroughly. Doesn't say perfectly, just says give it your best shot. Be thorough in what you do. Give it your best efforts. Doesn't mean you have to do anything in here perfectly. The only step that you can do perfectly is step 1. And we'll talk about that later. Those who do not recover are 2 groups. And I've written a number 1 next to cannot. Cannots are those who are still drinking. Okay, you are not going to succeed in this program if you are still drinking and using. So it says right there, sorry, those who do not recover are people who are obviously still active, right? And then there's the will nots. And the will nots are the frustrating ones, because they're the ones that won't do the work. They've acknowledged they're alcoholic, but they're not willing to do the work to get themselves beyond that point. Does that make sense to everybody? So you see that. So I've got a 1 next to the word cannot and a 2 next to the will nots, and put those are the 2 groups who fail. The cannots, who are the still drinking, and the will nots, who won't do the work. And then notice that this is going to take some time, because every word in here has been carefully chosen. The next word is completely. Give themselves to this simple program. And that is my experience. That is why it is working for me this time. I am all in. I am absolutely committed to this program and passing it on. So I know now I've done that. But before I hadn't completely given myself. And then it says it's a simple program. And next to that, I've got not easy, but very simple. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable, and this is a big sentence to underline, being honest with themselves. That for me is the beginning of this whole program, is looking in the mirror and saying right to my own face. And I did this yesterday. I haven't heard back yet how it's turned out, but with someone who's still drinking. And I said, turn your phone on yourself while you're talking to me and video this conversation and tell me you're not drinking. And now let's have a conversation to the camera about why we want to stop. And because I've had this conversation 3 or 4 times and she never remembers it. And a few people I've done that with have gone back and watched those videos, and that feeling of, oh my God, is that me? It's somehow there's a connection that happens then, instead of that disconnect where you actually look at yourself in a video where you're drunk, or you hear yourself speaking when you've been drinking and your words are slurring and you realize it's not yourself. There's no way of running from that. There's no disconnect. There's no blackout. When you actually see the evidence of it and you've taken it yourself and you speak to yourself. And I'm just passing that on as a tool. If you're working with others, I've found that now on several occasions with people that are relapsing, and even with drugs in the withdrawal, videoing the withdrawal has really, they said, and this is feedback directly from them, the one thing that makes them stop using or drinking again is watching that video again. Oh my God, I don't want to be that person again. Okay, so that's a pretty heavy paragraph. Now notice it says being honest with themselves. That's what I'm talking about. That's what that video says. Now notice that the 2 sentences later, it says, these people that are going to fail are those that are incapable of being rigorously honest. Rigorously. That's like all in. It's not just about being honest. This is the thing we've got to get across. And if you're struggling with emotional sobriety, look in the mirror and say, what is my higher power? What's going on here? Be rigorously honest. And then be rigorously honest with your sponsor. And once we actually are willing to open up like that, this rigorous honesty, and then look at the very last 3 words in that paragraph. They've said it again, capacity to be honest. So that is 3 times in the opening paragraph of how it works. 3 different ways that it's saying to you, get honest with yourself. Before there's any discussion of the steps, that it's saying the group that's not going to make it are the ones that can't do this rigorous honesty. That's all it takes, is just owning it. But we all know how difficult it is to do that and be 100% rigorous. I failed at that many times and drank on it over and over again. But when I finally was thorough, and again, the word thoroughly followed our path. So I know I'm really belaboring that, but does everybody understand why this is one of the most important paragraphs in the book? Thumbs up. Okay, let's carry on.
You want to go one more paragraph, Ron?
Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps.
Okay, another important paragraph that's often overlooked. This ties the rest of the book together. This is why there are stories in this book. Because sometimes you have to hear it from the recovered alcoholic in so many different ways. And if you haven't read the stories, one of the best exercises is just dip into it. In every single story, it explains the spiritual experience, how the person connects with a higher power. Every single story. And it also identifies many of the people that are referred to anonymously in the first 164 pages. The accountant, there's all these people are identified in the early stories of the pioneers. So it's quite fun to figure out who's who. But apart from that, if you're traveling as I am, and boy, I've learned some really interesting things than pages that I hadn't even opened. So here is this paragraph telling us our stories. Now, these are all people that are recovered alcoholics as a result of doing the steps as stated in this book. That's why their stories have been selected. So it's actually referring us to a whole bunch of different success stories. And if you're working with newcomers, it's quite good to have a grasp of what these stories are, because you can then say, well, maybe you just ought to flip over and read Student of Life or Tightrope. It's fun anyway, if you've got the time. Amy's just finished doing going through a group that was doing story by story. So it's something, if you haven't done it, it might be worth a visit. So it's telling us right there. Also, our stories, those can now be the stories we hear in our meetings. At the time this book was written, there was no internet. There certainly weren't lead speakers and such, but that is also guiding us back to the people that walked before us successfully. So listen to the stories of those who've gone before us. It also says here, in a general way. Now, general way, it's what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. And that's where it's important to share enough details when we're sharing our stories for identification. But we don't have to go into a lot of nitty-gritty detail, because what we're trying to do to the newcomer, or we're not do to, but we're trying to bring into the newcomer is, hey, I'm like them. Their story isn't so different. You know, it's the things, and we teach them to look for the similarities. So when we share in a general way, what we're trying to do is share the part of us that helps us connect with the still suffering alcoholics inside and outside of the rooms. Okay, that pretty much covers that. Yeah, and then it says, and then you have to decide if you want what we have. What do we have? We have sobriety or recovery as a result of doing the 12 steps according to the big book. So if you want that, here's the place to hang out and get it. That's what's on offer. But then it says there's a condition subsequent, as we used to call it in law. You gotta act. It says right there, and do not miss this sentence, then you are ready to take certain steps, not any old steps, because what's to follow now is the 12 steps. So this paragraph is a very precise set of directions. Listen to the stories, learn from other people's experience, do as we've done, follow this program for living as written in this book, and you too can come out the other side. But you got to do the work. Nobody's going to do it for you. Okay. Where are we at time-wise, Amy?
I have no idea. Sorry. Hold on, I do have a comment. My clock is gone. Oh, we have about 8 more minutes. But on that stories, we have one more to do. Ron goes to that meeting a lot too. We read the last one tomorrow morning. But what's cool is when you read the stories, because this is my first experience, like really reading through them, is you hear all the quotes that people talk about all the time. You know, like you hear all the different quotes and sayings and blah, blah. I'm like, oh, it's from that story. Oh, it's from that story. So it's cool when you like, I know the quotes and hear them chatted. And then when I'm like working out listening, and I'm like, oh, I know that one. And I come home and I take notes. So it's fun.
I just realized, Amy, what nerds we are. We have these conversations where we get very excited about these things. It's like I just identified that saying, but I know you guys are learning to, and many of you have so much more experience than I do. It's just such a magical book. So is this a good place to stop recording?
Well, we can, I mean, if you want to, I'd
Oh, can we got time to carry on?
Owen. Yeah, because we still have 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes.
I have no clock. Okay.
Yeah, we're
so
only
let's
at 38. So I don't know. Nick, do you want to read? I can't remember. You have a book there, don't you?
Yep.
Some of these we
Yeah,
bought.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Nick and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
At some of these we balked. We thought we could find this easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely.
Okay.
Remember? Oh, sorry.
Just 1 second there. We're just going to comment on a couple of things. Easier, softer way. It's like doing AA light. Okay, I've mentioned that to you guys before. I came in here and I agreed I would do certain things, but there's no way I was doing other things. And I wasn't going to tell anybody a step 4 totally, truly. And, you know, I was going to do what worked for me and leave the rest behind. That's what they're saying there. It sounds like a big order, but in fact, unless you accept going all in to doing what you're told and just do the work in here, it follows a natural progression. So there's nobody that's going to do these steps perfectly, and there isn't even a perfect way of doing them, but it's the willingness to have a go at doing all of them. And that's what it's saying. It says, this is a heavy statement that with all the earnestness at our command, we beg. That's not a word that Bill's used by accident. We're on our knees begging. You know, come to this side because we have an answer. And then it's saying, be fearless and thorough from the very start. And then a warning. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result is nil. You got to go all in, because otherwise, and then he says, it's nil until we, and I've got this circled and big stars next to it, let go absolutely. Not 95%. It's all in. And that's when I finally got sober. When I stopped yeah-butting and making excuses and having resentments or not wanting to do things the way my sponsor said I had to. When I let go of all of that and I got honest with myself, I started to get this program. Okay, carry on.
Okay. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now.
Okay, so again, very, very powerful words. And here's the definition of alcohol, but it's also anything in your life that you are letting be your higher power. Cunning, baffling, powerful. It's bigger than you. And then here's the solution. It's also really quite frank, without help. So if you're going to rely on yourself, it's going to be too much for you. It's too much for me. I tried doing this alone forever. Self-will. If you've ever been told, oh, come on, you're a smart person, you just get a grip. You can beat this, or, you don't have to do that. You're smarter than that. How far did self-will get me? It's a disease. I have no control over this once I start. So, and that's what it's saying. But there is one, and here's the big answer, guys, who has all the power. You don't have to be relying on yourself. These are words, really big words of inspiration and a promise. It says the answer, it's right here. That one is God. And again, when the word God appears, that's your understanding. Whenever you see the word God, don't get turned off. It's your definition. It's not a religious deity. It's not a Christian God, a Catholic God, a Muslim God. It is your higher power, the God of your understanding. And may you find him now, although Bill's referring to him with a capital H there as God. It's the God, again, of your understanding. And this last three sentences, read that, and then I'll tell you why we're stopping there.
You got it, Nick?
Half measures.
Okay. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon.
Okay, so let's break down what some of this means. What's a half measure? That's not going all in. Anything that you do that's less than your full effort is going to, and it tells it availed, that means results. So it says anything but your best efforts is going to result in a 0 result. So half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. Here's where we're making a decision. Are we going to turn it over to our higher power or not? This is a 3rd step decision. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. What does complete abandon mean? without reservation. All in. So this, to me, this sentence is step 3, was where I genuinely surrender. This is right where I'm coming into 3. And reason I'm stopping here is this is also the preamble to listing the 12 steps. So this is there's not time to even begin to go into that, nor would it even be appropriate to start that tonight. But that takes us tidily, I think, into how it works. Enough from me. Let me hear from you guys.